Ladies and gents, get your jackets because winter is coming. It's Burbo time. For anyone who's new, Burbo is Ben Trbojevic, name starter for Manly. He's going to be one of the guys we're talking about today. We're going to jump into Kalyn Ponga. Should you buy him after that insane performance? Should we be rushing in Parramatta players? Should we be looking at some of the other cash cows? Maybe a Harrison Edwards fresh off 70 points. So we've got today for our buy, hold, sell segment. So let's jump in. Biz, how are you feeling about yourself before we go into these guys for the buy rounds? Are you think you're pretty well prepared?
Yeah, man, looking pretty good for the buys. Did my little spreadsheet for rounds 13, 16, and 19, which are the big buy rounds. But a friend of mine, Kill, he reminded me that half my players are actually on buy round 14 because a lot of the guys that have really good buy schedules for like 13 and 16, they miss round 14, like the Eels and the Manly players. So we're going to get into Burbo in a second, but I realized I had maybe like 4 or 5 players out for round 14. So when you're buy planning, guys, just remember, don't forget round 14. Don't forget round 17. Just keep an eye on them. But otherwise, feeling pretty good. Gained a few hundred ranks this week, creeping back into the top 1,000. Got to keep hustling.
And how do you feel about Burbo? Is he a guy you're buying this week?
Yeah, I'm buying Burbo this week. Like, look, there's definitely pros and cons, and we're going to debate him. But at 220K, he slots into the center position as well. Plays around 13 and 16, misses 14, like I mentioned. But he's a good stopgap option if he holds a spot for 4 to 6 weeks, which his incumbent Kelma Tuolangi is actually touted to miss about 6 weeks. So if Burbo keeps 6 weeks, you're getting a player who plays 13 and 16 in the center position for base price 220K, playing in the second row. So if he can continue his career PPM of about 0.5 for 60, 70 minutes in that second row spot, he can average 35 plus. So he's definitely a good get this week. But I know you're not as sold on him. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, he's a base price guy available at center who's going to be playing the forward position. So that's great. But I do have some worries about the bench. I'm going to buy him as well. But guys like Condon, Bullimore, Carl Lawton, they've all started on the edge. And I personally think a couple of those guys have shown a bit more than Ben Trbojevic has in their time on the edge as well. So it could be a case of a bit of timeshare. It might not happen this week, but potentially next week when Sipley comes back into the team. He eats up a lot of those middle minutes. Maybe a guy like Condon who plays middle this week moves back to the edge next week. So there's a bit of risk there in Ben Trbojevic, but at the price, there really isn't a risk. It's more just a risk if you're looking at him and saying, I'm going to use him as a starter for the rest of the year or for the buy periods. You might not want to say, all right, he's locked into 40. I think he could be a guy who's more plodding around those mid-20s, 30-point mark, but he also could explode. So I'm open to either.
He doesn't have a great work rate. Like, I looked at his scores historically. He's played 2 games in second row, one where he scored a double and scored 60-odd, which is great. He does have that attacking upside. But in terms of defense, he made about 24 tackles that game in less than 100 meters. So in terms of base stats, they're not really there. And in the second game, he got HI'd after about 15 minutes, and he was on about 10, 12 points. So good PPM there, but not enough of the sample size. As most people know, in your first 20 minutes, your PPM is generally higher when teams are like grinding out through the middle, a lot more tackles, less open style footy. But look, you're right. You can't really rely on him as a for sure starter, but I'm kind of using him as a stopgap for a couple of weeks. I'm kind of hoping he can just start long enough until Valencia Tuara will, get the starting spot for the Dolphins. Like, I think that's inevitable in the next few weeks. Onto the next guy, Oloapu. So we discussed him last week, and I asked you the question: do you think he'll start next week or after the bye? And you were pretty sure he might start after the bye, but he's here now. He's playing at 6. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, maybe they looked at the fixtures and thought, look what Kalyn Ponga did against the Titans last week. Maybe Carl can do the same thing. I'm surprised they did it before the bye. I thought they would have taken that 2-week gap and said, let's really train it in. But the Dogs have made the move. Josh Reynolds is still on the bench. I don't think that's a concern for Carl. I think Reynolds comes on as that roving middle forward sort of option there. So, yeah, look, if you don't have Carl Oloapu, you need to buy him right now. He's 269K. He's plus 40K on the season so far. He's been scoring in the 20s in about 50 minutes a game. So, yeah, easy option to buy. He doesn't play the first major buy round, but he's a genuine cash cow, and he seems to be the future of that 7 spot for the Dogs as well. I'll throw another doggy at you here. We got Harrison Edwards, who has snuck his way to 378k. Now, do you think he's worth a look for anyone at this stage?
Look, it's really difficult because, like you said, he's snuck to 380k price mark, and he's pretty much priced himself out. Like he's at the higher end of your cash cows at this point. You can't really call him a cash cow. He's essentially a mid-ranger now. And yeah, he scored a try and had a really good score last week in a 70-minute role. But if you actually look at his stats, even with the minutes, he's generally a 35-point guy. So while he's currently underpriced, he's probably not worth rushing into your team unless you think he can have those big boom games going forward. Like he's a bit of a workhorse in defense, but he kind of reminds me of an Egan Butcher type where he'll rack up a bunch of tackles but not really score much elsewhere, and then it's offset by missed tackles and penalties. So if you just look at his scoring, 35 isn't enough for me. If he played next week, definitely, but he doesn't play around 13. Round 16 and 19, he does play, but, dogs have quite a few mids. You just don't know if he's good enough to hold his spot. Probably not worth the risk for me, but if you need a boost this week, you're playing head-to-head or you've already stacked up for round 13, then you can get him in, but otherwise I would be skipping him. But
can I just jump in too? When does Luke Thompson come back? Does Ryan Sutton take that spot? Does Tyler Mariner get back into the starting side? Does Josh Reynolds eat into his minutes now that he's on the bench? Like, there are a lot of questions on this guy, and we're talking about bench wedge, but look, Edwards has more of those questions, and he's at the wrong price. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think steer clear on him. Another risky one here, Danny Levi. It's a minutes question for him, but I feel like we talk about him every year. He's always sitting around this price with an opportunity to excel, and my view is he doesn't take it often. And with Tom Starling and the team being a better hooker in my eyes, he's a guy I'm letting to slide in through the keeper. How about you?
Yeah, look, I don't disagree. The thing with Danny Levi is that he played the first game, looked pretty good. He played about 55 minutes with 40 points, and I don't really understand why Ricky continues to use Starling in like a 30, 40, 50-minute role. Like, Starling is a good hooker. When I watch him play 70, 80 minutes, he doesn't look like he's making mistakes or playing poorly. It's just one of those things as a fan. Look, I'm not a Raiders fan or anything, but I watch enough games where Starling looks pretty good. He passes the eye test, and I'm not sure about like these guys like Levi, Wolford are doing much starting, but Ricky likes using them. So if Levi at his price point can get 50 minutes, average 35 odd, then he could be decent, but his career PPM isn't there. And like I said last week in our buyer's guide, you can only play one hooker in round 13. And if you're going to make a trade to get a hooker in just for round 13, like, I wouldn't waste it on Levi. There's better options out there, which we'll cover in this video. But yeah, I'd pass unless you're really desperate.
Yep, totally agree. And the last guy here is probably a bit in the same boat. Sean Russell, he's 335k. He gets back into the starting side at Parramatta. He's a guy who's not particularly high pedigree as far as fantasy scoring, but he does score a try. And you'd probably argue that Parramatta will do well through the buys. So only Junior Paulo missing as far as origin, but Sean Lane, Regan Campbell-Gillard out for quite a while as well. So the spine is intact, but the forward pack is a bit light. Is there any world where you'd look at Sean Russell here? I'm probably steering towards no.
I already got him in my team when he was playing centre a few weeks ago. I just held him in case because Dunster wasn't playing well, and I was like, okay, well, he plays all the major buys. I might as well keep him. But Russell's the type of guy that I'll, have this week. Souths always massacre Parramatta every year, even when Parramatta's playing well. So now that Parramatta aren't playing well, it could be a tough showing this week. So I'm not actually sure if Russell even keeps a spot for next week. I'm hoping it does, but he's the type of guy right after round 13, I might try and move to a guy who plays 16, 19 or make money for like a Kiraz type of person. But if you don't have him, I wouldn't bring him in. There's too many people fighting for that spot.
Yeah, see, I reckon he'll keep the spot personally, but I just don't think the fantasy production is
there.
He
needs a hat trick to score 45. So
yeah, exactly. And like you said, Souths are going to get the job done, I think. Just say we're both Parramatta fans, but Alex Johnston
broken down.
yeah, it's been tough. Let's go into buys here. So there's some pretty hard options here. We might go a bit quicker through these guys before we get into the really interesting pods, the juicy options. So first guy here is Mitch Moses, and I feel like we're on the same page with Mitch. he was absolutely flying. He had that game where he had the head knock, a bit less minutes, and Parramatta were not going great. So he's down to about 800K here. Break even's decently high. I would probably be waiting a week on Mitch personally, but he's a pedigree top tier half. He's going to play all the major buys. He kicks a lot. He goal kicks. He offers a lot in attack. What more do you want? Next guy I'll throw to you here is Jeremy Marshall-King. And yeah, if you were looking at options here for round 13 hookers, let's say you had no one like me, and you've sort of kept that door open. Would you be looking at Marshall-King? Would you be looking at Robson? Is there someone cheaper you'd be looking at? How would you fill that spot?
Yeah, I think it's best if you have if you look at the hookers this year, it's Harry Grant, a bit of a gap, Damien Cook, a bit of a gap, and then everyone else. You could say Robson and Jeremy Marshall-King are on the Cook tier, but probably not in reality. Like Cook's just going through a bit of a lull, but he is a tier above them. But Cook plays Origin, Grant plays Origin, so they're not worth bringing. So you probably ideally want a JMK or a Robson playing in round 13. And JMK plays round 13 and 19, and he's got a pretty favourable buy schedule, and he's quite a bit of a pod as well. And he's got no hope of Origin, right? Whereas Robson, he could actually squeeze on onto the bench or as 18th man for the Blues. And with the new HI rules, 18th man is going to miss the games as well. So I'd just wait a week on Robson just in case he makes the squad. But Jeremy Marshall-King, he's a good buy, good scorer pod, in a team that relies on him a lot. Like they give him the ball quite often. Obviously, he's the hooker, but they put a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. So, another guy that you don't have to worry about Origin or anything like that is Tarpanay. Is in your team because he's pretty tempting for me at the moment.
Yeah, so I don't have him in my team. I've got him in my dream team side. He's going great there, but I don't know. Tarpanay feels like one of those guys that's exactly in your wheelhouse. So he's a bona fide gun. He's a guy that automatically converts minutes to points. And he's a guy with a lot of upside who passes the eye test. So he feels to me like the type of guy you're 100% going to have, even if you don't have it planned right now. 695K, look, we talk about the price and risk and that sort of equation there. And with Tarpanay at 695K, there is no risk in that price. If he plays basically as poorly as he possibly can without being injured, obviously, that's the price he's going to stay. So I personally reckon you've got a guy here who's 695K. The upside there is that he goes to 850K, maybe 900K if he has a really good run of form. The downside is nothing. So if I had a middle slot, there's a lot of guys. There's a few other guys we're going to talk about in the pods as well, but Tarpanay is one of those guys that I'd be pretty happy to grab. Do you have anything more to add on Tarpanay, or do you want to jump straight to Luki?
No, I can cover Luki, and man, what a week he had. 2 tries last week, really low ownership. I feel like, my mate had a bunch of players who all scored tries, and Luki was one of the guys he brought in last week, and a double. He looked great. He's a gun young player. 84 odd points, 2 tries. The only thing I'm not sure about Luki is he didn't get the minutes again. They increased from about 55 minutes to 60 minutes, but Nanai's coming back. Jack Kazewski's playing well. Got the young gun on the bench who's playing 20 minutes in Luki spots and the game. So at 516K, like in the mid 400s last week before that huge score, that was more tempting. But at 516, I think it's probably a 45 average player at best. Like he's going to have these boom games, but I mean, the week before he scored 19 points in 60 minutes. So you can see like he's going to be up and down. Plays around 13 and 16, won't play Origin. So I think he's still a good buy if you need an edge position player, but I'll probably skip him. He's probably too much of a mid-ranger for me.
Yeah, 516K is tough. I got him at that 460K price point. So I was pretty happy with that, and obviously very happy watching him score those tries. But 516, you got a bit of that risk priced in. There's the injury risk as well that you haven't even mentioned there too, that his hammies could go. He's had some knee injuries. Obviously, for footy fans in general, for Cowboys fans, everyone wants to see him fit and do well. I think in the full-strength team, he's a guy that's getting big minutes on the edge there, and him and Nanai are the 2 edge back rowers. I assume Luciano isn't back anytime soon. I haven't heard anything about any of that. But at 516K, there's upside in it. That's the thing. There's upside in it. And if he hits the nice run of form, pretty good origin schedule there as well. he's a guy who could potentially elevate to 700k at some point. He could also get hurt or have some plotting scores and fizzle out, like we saw Eli Katoa do recently. So, yeah, it's a question of whether you back the talent. That's the thing. At 516k, bit of a coin toss. I'd probably still do it if it worked for my team trades-wise, just because, I don't know, he's got a lot of upside in attack. I think his work rate in general is better than people are thinking as well. He had that really bad first game back from injury, 19 points. But if you look at his games before that, he's been doing pretty well as far as getting his hands on the ball, offloads and general play, decent-ish defensive work rate, not great. But, yeah, if the Cowboys get better, he's the guy who's going to benefit from that. Last guy we got here is Tatola on the buys. And Tatola at 445k. Again, a guy who is pure upside as far as scoring potential goes. He's a guy who we talked about it a bit last week, but he can be priced in the 600s, and he started the year priced in the 600s. He scored you 44 points last week. You've got Tom Burgess out injured right now. You've got Cam Murray set to line up for Origin. Damien Cook set to line up for Origin. There's a lot of reasons to like Tatola, especially with the Bunnies buy schedule. So for me, 445k, I've got all my slots filled for middle for round 13, but I'm still tempted to make a move on Tatola because as a pure fantasy option, he's probably going to make money.
Yeah, pretty much it. I've got nothing really to add. Like he's only going to get better over the Origin period as Cam Murray and co miss the team. So yeah, good upside there.
We're all on that. Next one, pods. So these guys are kind of exciting. I'll throw it to you because there's 3 winger fullbacks there that are really interesting. They're 3 guys that people aren't really looking at as much. I almost want to buy a couple of them. I'll let you pick. Which one of those 3 do you think has the high? Or which one do you want to talk about? Which one's the highest upside? Like, what are you thinking here?
Look, I'll pick Kiraz because I love watching Kiraz play. I would take Kiraz and Garrick as my tier 1s, and Alex Johnston is definitely a tier 2. But starting with Kiraz, he is just an excitement machine. He's come off the back of a tricky injury, and he's come out and scored 2 30-point games, like a 30 and a 37 or something. He's a guy who can bust out a 90 on any given week. And the Doggies have been struggling the last few weeks without some of their attacking weapons. Like you look at Josh Adokar, etc. He's missed a lot of time. I think just in general, as the Dogs kind of improve through the year, Kiraz is going to improve a lot as well. So just given how weak the wing fullback position looks this year, like Kiraz plays round 16 and 19, and he's going to be someone I rush into my team while he's bottoming out, after round 13. Garrick is, I'll let you talk about Garrick, but Garrick is a very different player to Kiraz. He's less all over the place, but he's just solid, good work rate, kicks goals. You were high on him last week. Did he make it into your team or?
I only got him in Dream Team. Didn't get him for fantasy, but he put up a great performance. And look, they're both good options. I think the goal kicking makes up the difference, where Kiraz has the tackle breaks. Garrick has those goal kicks. Manly have a pretty nice run of fixtures coming up too. So a guy like Garrick, he's just got to get fed some of those attacking opportunities, which I think he's going to have over this period. The other thing is Tom Trbojevic making Origin, not making Origin. It probably doesn't matter that much for Garrick, in my eyes. If Turbo's playing Origin, then Garrick probably gets more chances to be involved. Maybe not at fullback, but he'll be a more involved winger. Whereas if Turbo is playing for Manly those weeks, that's good for Garrick too, because he feeds Garrick tries. So yeah, I'm pretty high on Garrick. I like Kiraz better as a pure fantasy option, but Garrick plays around 13. So my team, I'm kind of flicking between these 2 guys as a replacement for Joey Manu if he's out for 3+ weeks. The last guy there is Johnston. And look, the upside with Johnston is that you have the chance right now to be early on Johnston. So 437k, he's got Parramatta this week. They let wingers score at will. Johnston's career average against Parramatta is like 16 tries a game. Like he could absolutely torch us. And as a Para fan, if I at least had him in fantasy, it would be less depressing. Also, you save 60k. That's the other side of it. But South attack hasn't been great for Johnston. Latrell misses those weeks, those Origin weeks. there's reasons not to like him as well. I mean, look, I think the top two are the better guys, and I know you just said the same thing too.
Yeah, I think Alex Johnston is definitely a distant third, but he could also be one of the guys that booms the quickest because he's at the lowest point and get in front of them price-wise. You could get Alex Johnston right in for 3 weeks and he costs more than Garrick and Kiraz, and then, transfer down if you need to.
I think it's Kiraz, though. Like, he was 693K, I think it was, a couple of months ago. 200K more, right? And people were talking about him as a buy then. Like, he is a keeper in disguise. Everyone's forgetting about it. He's that guy. Garrick started the year 650K. You're getting a big discount there. Johnston, yeah. Let's go to Davey. So, obviously, we've been watching Davey pretty closely as Para fans. He's a guy where he's passing the stat test because he got 80 minutes last week. He made 40 tackles. He only missed one. He's got some attacking upside as far as the stats go too. Hasn't necessarily been passing the eye test, but Sean Lane goes out injured this week. So he probably keeps that spot and probably keeps an 80-minute role. Are you, where do you sit on Davey? Are you an absolute no on Davey, an absolute yes, or you're on the fence right now?
Yeah, look, it's a really difficult one because if he keeps this role and the buy schedules the Eels have, he's a really solid pick. Like, he's probably a mid-40s guy playing 80 minutes with upside for a try here and there because he does run a pretty good line. Like, he's not a nuffy by any means. Like, I know he's copying a bit of heat from Eels fans because he's come in barely making the dog side, and now he's a starting big minute second row when we've got guys like Madison and Cartwright and Dury and all these guys. So, look, with Lane going down, it seems very clear that the Eels want to use Madison as a middle. Like, they seem very reluctant to give him edge minutes for whatever reason, because he's a great edge player as well. But I think Davey is reasonably secure. Like, I might have to visit that one again sometime this week, look at the math. Like, I think, at 40, like, he's probably, he is tempting. He's just, the only thing with him is, like, 470K is a bit awkward. Like, if he gets benched or doesn't play 80 minutes, then you're like, oh, what do you want to do with him? Doesn't play around 14, and I'm good for edges in round 13. So maybe I'll wait and see how he goes this week, and I'll assess if I want him next week.
That's interesting. So I've got a free slot there for an edge. So it's kind of where I'm leaning a bit harder into Davey right now. I'm just live looking up a few things as well. So his PPM career average is 0.6. So you're looking at, if it's 80 minutes, about a 48 average. That's not bad. But obviously you were talking about before, lower minutes does mean higher PPM. So if you call it a 45 or a 40, that's pretty good. The more I think about it, the more I'm into it. I think there's a lot of opportunities as well at Parramatta to score tries. I think he's a hot option. I'm probably going to buy him. As it stands right now, he's in my trade-ins. Let's go to the last guy here, Tommy Flegler. So he's on the Broncos. He's one you threw across, and I actually really liked it. I hadn't thought about him too much until you sent it through. Why do you like Flegler, and what got you to put him on this pod list?
Well, I looked at him last week, to be honest. I needed a guy in the 400s mark, and I was looking at the guys like Tatola, Luki, Flegler, who played round 13. And I try to think about it as who has actual upside, from Origin. And look, Flegler's a guy who could make the Origin team himself. I doubt it, but he's been there before, and he could be there again. He's playing pretty well. But obviously, Haas is going to be an Origin lock. So there's 70-odd minutes. And Carrigan as well, 70-odd minutes. Like, that's 140-odd minutes being vacated from the middle rotation for Brisbane over the Origin period. And Flegler's pretty good scorer when given the minutes. And I actually noticed that he had actually earned the prop role over the last few weeks, and he had been giving the 50-minute mark. So I felt like he was good for 40-plus average at the low 400s. Now, what was really interesting about Flegler last week is he played about 50 to 55 straight minutes. Like, he did not go off like for a while. Like, if I pull out the rotation right now and look at Flegler, he was on about 50 odd he went on off at about 50, 55, and then he came back on with time to go. And I'm pulling out the exact rotation right now. So he went off at the 50th minute, and he came back on at the 62nd minute. So he had a 12-minute rest. Starting properly, probably sees out the game, playing like 65, 70 minutes, and then he copped the sin bin. So that's why his score wasn't in the 50s. He probably scores 55, 60 if he's not from that. So a 450K playing round 13, that is someone I could gamble on, especially if, Haas going to be a guy and Carrigan gone. So I might have just talked myself into him this week. Let's see.
You're talking me into it right now. That was a great sales pitch. No. If he's that guy, then yeah, he's going to benefit hugely. He's playing well in real life. The other thing is when we look at the week after Origin, so those tough weeks that you were talking about, he's going to benefit there too because they're not going to play Carrigan and Haas for full games in those weeks, especially with how good the Broncos are going. He could be a guy who averages 50 plus through the Origin.
He played 66 minutes last week. And there's obviously going to be Adam Reynolds, got knocked out pretty early, so there's obviously impact to the rotation. But
actually, that's a great point. They did have because they didn't bring Corey Pakes on, so I think it was Carrigan playing in the halves, and
they brought Tapau on for Reynolds.
Yeah.
When he went off, so yeah.
Exactly.
Obviously increased his minutes, but in saying that, if I compare that to Payne's minutes, Payne Haas played 64 minutes, so Flegler actually got 2 more minutes than him.
Yeah,
so they clearly rate him. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, he's definitely durable. Wow. I'm leaning towards Flegler now. Let us know in the comments if you're going to buy Flegler or any of these other guys as well.
I want to see what Flegler's ownership is now, guys. I just want to hype him up as a pod. Footy Statistics has him at 1.99%. So you guys could be a rare breed if you pick him up. That's a proper pod.
You want to get the flag? You want to be different? That's hot. That's actually really good. His PPM as well, historically, 0.85. So if you get 60 minutes, it's 50 points. That's really juicy. Hold or sell here. So making space for these players that we're talking about. And there's a lot of guys on this list who are priced pretty highly. So I'm finding with my trades right now, it's hard to fill up the cap because I'm wanting all these players who are 400K, 450, 500, which is a great luxury to have. But when you're trading out guys like Joey Manu or any of these other guys, it feels a bit mismatched. So I'll throw Joey Manu in there first. What is the maximum time frame he could be out where you would want to hold him?
3 weeks, I think. Because he was going to miss next week anyway. So then, 2 weeks, and he plays around 16. The thing with Joey Manu, and I'm selling him this week because I don't need a fullback or a center in round 16. That's the one position I'm sweet on. I've got a bunch of the bloody Eels, Simonson and Russell are just going to give me 20 points. But one reason I don't want to trade Joey Manu is he covers the 2 worst positions in fantasy scoring wise this year. And when he's at 6, he's probably the best player in both of those positions. So he's not only the best center, but he's also the best fullback when he's playing at 6. So it's hard to trade him, the dual position. But Walker's going to be back soon. There's no real guarantee he plays 6 the whole season. It feels like one of those, those injuries that could just linger or just kind of hold him back a bit, just plague him. So I think worst case is I sell him now, ride Burbo, hopefully makes 150, 200K, and then I can bring Joey Manu back. But I'm probably selling him, but you can also argue the other way that you can play Burbo until Manu comes back and you just hold him. But 655K, that's a lot of money sitting on your bench. But if you're good for round 13, there's an argument to hold for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. It's risky to hold him, but if it is a 2-week injury, which I'm hearing from some sources that's what it is, then I'll be holding for sure. If it's longer, 3 weeks, sort of that borderline. I'm sort of leaning more towards hold, actually, the more I think about it, just because Sam Walker is out for 4 weeks. So if Sam Walker was coming into the team right now for Drew Hutchison, then I'd be thinking, okay, maybe we don't bring in. Sorry, your clicker's really loud, by the way.
My bad.
All good. Look, the other thing too is I'm just going to skip to McInnes here. So McInnes is 628K. He's a guy I've got, and he's out with a broken hand, obviously. So trading him frees up a bit of cash. It means when we're looking at those 400k guys, that frees up 150k, 200k. So selling him means you probably maybe don't need to sell Manu unless you're going for a gun. I'll throw Hosking to you because I know you've got Hosking. Are you holding Hosking? Are you selling Hosking?
Not sure. I'm holding Hosking because I still think he's the second rower in form for Penrith. Like, we discussed this before the recording, but he did get a HIA pretty early on and then not come back on, not because he didn't pass his HIA, but just for, math script purposes. But I think, the Panthers got so far ahead so quickly in the game, there was no point bringing him back on. But up until he went off, he was actually one of the best players on the field. Like, he was looking really dangerous, running those inside balls with Cleary. He nearly busted the line a couple of times. So I just think at 688k, like, Hosking's a guy who's averaging almost 60. He does have this, like, a couple of games where he gets benched, and now that Liam Martin's back, that could happen more often, but I'm willing to wait this week. Because, like I said, I don't need a round 13 player, and if he's busting up again this week, and then, then I'll think about moving him after round 13, but, he is a guy that when he plays 80 minutes, he's like 60-odd score. So I'm willing to hold on to him this week.
Yeah, interesting. So I'm probably leaning a little more on the sell side for him. You don't have to necessarily buy an edge-back rower, but there's just some really good guys available right now. Next guy I'll jump in here is... Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, there's actually a lot of good use of money this week. There's some good buys in that range.
Yeah. I'll throw Tedesco in there next. So 550k. I'm an unfortunate James Tedesco owner and have been all year. And it's been a plague. It's been tough. But for Teddy at 550k, we'll start with the question realistically, because when you're looking at trading a guy out who's out of form, you got to think, all right, this has been bad for a while now, but what's going to happen now that I trade him out? Like, what am I actually trading out here? And in the realistic realm of outcomes, is there a world where Tedesco gets into the 400s? Probably not without injury. So at 550k, I'm thinking at this point, I've copped a lot of losses. I need to hang on here and just wait for a bounce back. And that could be me digging my feet in a bit too much. I've definitely made that mistake before where you really stick with your initial analysis. But I think the Chooks will lean on him. You got Drew Hutchison playing the halves. Hutchison is the opposite of Manu. Manu goes himself. Hutchison is going to be shoveling that ball on to Tedesco. So I think we're going to see a lot more Teddy over the next few weeks. You've also, got no Manu in the centers either. So guys like Billy Smith, Joseph Sully, the wingers aren't going to dominate either. I think we're going to see a lot of vintage Teddy getting those 20 runs a game and not shoveling the ball on, but instead going himself a lot more. So I think Teddy's a pretty firm hold.
Yeah, and I like the thing with Teddy is, unlike guys like Turbo and Ponga, he still passes the eye test. Like, he still looks good on the field. Yeah. He still looks active. He hasn't really slowed down. Like, obviously he's getting older, but he just hasn't fell his way this year. And I guess in the wing fullback spot, there's not that many people killing it. And if you look at his Origin buddy, Latrell Mitchell, people are probably having this discussion with him like 5 rounds in when he was looking like a sell. He had kind of fallen 100k, and look at him now. Like, he's easily the best fullback in the game. So Teddy's definitely a guy who can score 100 on any given week and then put 2 or 3 80-plus scores together. So unless you've got some really good buy for him, I don't mind holding him, because you had like those guys before, Garrick at 500k, Kiraz at 490k. Are they really better than Teddy? Like, no. And they're pretty much similar price, exactly. So you're not actually making that much money from the trade down at this point. Like, Teddy is definitely at least 50k better than Garrick. You know what I'm saying? It'll even out. It's still a long season. Yeah.
You only lose money when you sell the player as well. So if Teddy bounces back, you bounce back too. Let's throw Preston in here last. So look, Jacob Preston, 634k is a lot of money right now for him. He's going pretty well in real life and in fantasy. He's got the Titans this week. He's running it, as long as he's on the left, which I think he will be, he's running at Simpson, which is better than running for Feeder. So he's got a decent matchup this week to score some points, old Jacob Preston. I'm leaning towards hold at this point, and I may end up holding guys like Preston, Paul Alamotti, I feel there's other Dogs guys, Kiraz eventually forgetting him through the Origin period, because obviously they don't play round 13, but it gets a lot better after that.
Yeah, Dogs have a great schedule after round 13. Like they play 16 and 19. The only question is the reason why I'm probably more on the sell camp. Like I'm going to hold this week, but sell next week. And the reason for that is I'm not sure Preston is enough of a gun to hold until 16 or 19. Like he's kind of at that 45 to 50 average, whereas like I'd really like to turn that into a 55 to 60 average, if that makes sense, at that price point. So, I mean, look, he's only like 25K cheaper than Tohu Harris, who's a 60-point player, right? With a similar buy schedule. But yeah, look, we've had him on this section about 3 weeks in a row now, and my answer hasn't changed. Like a hold, if you don't have if you only really need to sell him if your team's doing really well elsewhere. But otherwise, you can just hold him. I want to hold him because I got other fires to put out.
Yeah, I mean, look, him and Hosking are both there at a similar 50K difference, but you probably have to choose one to hold, one to sell. Do you back Hosking's sort of fantasy pedigree? Do you back Preston's attacking upside and consistent minutes? I'm probably leaning towards the attacking upside and consistent minutes personally, but it could go either way. Let's go into the last section here. Look, so the guys to wait on, and this is new. Hold your horses, calm down. If you got to this point, drop a note in the comments letting us know that you got to here so that we know you're one of the best viewers. Just comment who you're going to captain this week. Are you going Cleary? Are you going Hines? Are you going Payne-Haas? I'll be going Hines myself, so that's the right answer. But for the wait options, these are guys who we like the look of, but we just think maybe wait a week, wait 2 weeks before you buy them. I'm going to start here with Kalyn Ponga first. So Ponga had a sensational real-life game. He scored 56 points in that game, which, considering the quality of the performance, is not the best score. He still had a nice 407K, but the problem with that big performance is that put him right back into Origin eligibility. So if you're looking at Ponga and you buy him this week, he runs out, he scores a 35 for you this week, then he gets picked for Origin, you've failed. You've failed as a fantasy coach. You don't want to do that.
That's harsh, mate. That's harsh.
It's a failure.
App, as they say.
No, we're not going to do toxic Facebook group stuff, but genuinely, they're like, it is a fail because he's probably the favorite for that spot. If you wait till next week, maybe he's amazing.
Wait on that. Didn't we have a bet last week that if Ponga doesn't make Origin, we definitely did a bet. I want to whip out last week's video because we definitely had a bet on
it. Go get it. Did I say you wouldn't make it?
Yeah, you said he wouldn't make it. I said he would.
It's such a good game. That's the problem. I still don't think he should make it. I know, like Brimson being out helps him. I like Brimson over all the options, but you could probably go Palmer over Walsh. Hey, look, if he just wait a week though, right, and wait till next week, and maybe he doesn't make it. Maybe he doesn't make it, then you buy him. But you don't want to buy him just before he plays Origin because he won't play 13. And with how he's been injury-wise,
he's not backing up. No chance. Zero chance.
No. And Gamble's not bad in that role either. Like, yeah, wait on Kalyn Ponga. Don't buy Kalyn Ponga this week. If I see any trades in the comments with Kalyn Ponga, then I'm gonna start deleting people from the channel. Let's go to the next guy, Jermaine Hopgood. We had a bit of a debate about this one, so I'll let you serve here in the tennis debate.
Yeah, look, I like Hopgood. I don't think he's going to make the Origin team. Like, there's a chance, which is why he's in this weight section. But I'm on him this week. He's dual position. He has the best schedule where he plays 13, 16, and 19. Dual position during those periods is great because you can slot them into the mid or edge and be flexible around it. And he'll benefit from Junior being out in those weeks as well. So with Lane out, that's another 80-minute player gone. Although Cardi's going to step into the 80-minute role, but Hopgood could. It kind of fluctuates between like 55 or 70 minutes. So hopefully more weeks of 70 minutes. But I like him at this price. There's other guys there's so many good mids right now who play good buys like Horsburgh and Hopgood and Jack DeBell and all these guys. But I'm not too worried that he'll make Origin. I just don't think the Eels are playing well enough for him to force his way in. And there's a couple other contenders, Horsburgh and Flegler and those guys. But you think he might make it, and that makes it too risky for you. I
just think there's a big case to be made for him making it. So I'm not saying he will make it, but if I was looking at my bench and going, all right, I need a guy to play 30 minutes for impact as middle forward, Horsburgh is not in the conversation for me. He's only really valuable to the team if he's playing bigger minutes as a workhorse. A guy like Jermaine Hopgood, or personally for me, his biggest threat is Fodawaker. These are guys who come on and make a big impact in 2 15-minute stints, or coming on 20 minutes to go and be told by the coach, hey, we're down by 10. You need to create something. And Hopgood has done that for Parramatta time and time again. Bit of a high-risk nuclear option for Queensland, but as your last bench forward, when you're starting a bunch of guys who can play 80 minutes, that's what you want. So I think Hopgood, if he has another great performance this week, after having a few great ones in a row recently, he jumps right into that conversation. So for me, I was looking at him and Robson, and the problem is they're both kind of origin risks. So I think if you can wait a week on Hopgood, it's going to cost you some money. It might cost you some points this week, but I'm a little iffy on him. Next guy's in the same camp here too, Dane Gagai. Do you see Gagai making the team at this stage?
Well, yeah, there's been reports coming out that he's not going to make the team, and like the hammer will be there. But I'm very surprised by that because Gagai usually plays poorly at club level and gets picked for Origin as like the best player in the park. This year he's playing really well at club level, and like he's the best fantasy center. Like, he's averaging 55, which is just mind-boggling. Like, you just don't see it from an actual player who's actually playing in the centers as opposed to in the halves or the second row or at fullback. So I think it's a bit of a beat up. Like, surely not. I don't know. The report.
It's Queensland mind games. It's got to be mind games.
It has to be like that. It's not like Ponga where he's one of their best every year, but he's having a bad year. So Gagai's one of the best every year, and he's having a great year. So
he's having the best year of his career, hands down.
It doesn't make sense to me. Like
he's incredible right now.
But if he doesn't make it, he plays round 13 and 16. He's owned by like less than 5% of people. He's owned by like 2 or 3%, and he's the best player at his position. So even though he's stupidly expensive, his price for a center defies every rule of fantasy. But sometimes fantasy is like how is he scoring 55 every week? I got no idea. But I might go out and go get him. Screw it. Like, he's best player at his position, low ownership with good buys. Maybe
you know what? You go Preston or Hosking or one of these guys. Not a big gap there. So
exactly,
26K is a lot to pay, but he could be worth it.
Yeah, for sure. The only problem with that, like, not just wait, but he's also a guy that if Queensland lose game 1, he might just be rushed back into the team game 2. So that's also an inspiration.
For sure. And he'd be in the squad pretty much no matter what, unless there's some problem. Next up, Valence Tavares. So 277K. I saw a few people trading him in last week and thought, maybe don't do that. Maybe give it a week. But for some people, it made sense for their trades, and it looked at the time like he was probably going to keep that spot. Branko Lee, I don't think he's got as many attacking stats as Valence Tavares had in one game across the whole season. So it looked like Valence is going to keep the spot, but obviously Bennett's valuing experience and defense at this point. He'll probably still get into the team at some point. So if people do have him, it's not a bad move necessarily, but it's probably a bit of a move you got to wait on. I guess throw in too, if this news about Hamiso getting to Origin is true, then Isako goes to fullback probably. Valence gets into the team round 13. So again, not a loss. If he has another great performance, he might keep his spot. There probably isn't too much else to say about him, is there?
No, I got him in just before he debuted because I needed a center for a week, and I'm just going to hold him because you're right. I reckon he's now earned the right to be the next man up for a backline injury. So hopefully, he gets some time over the next few weeks. Goodbye schedule as well. So
Beauty, yeah. And then Tohu Harris you mentioned before, so I'll let you lead on him. Look, 671K.
No, Brandon, he's got the bye this week, which is the only reason you should be waiting is because he's not playing this week. If he was playing this week, he'd be like the bye of the week. He's playing 80 minutes again. He's averaging about 61 points when he's playing 80 minutes. Really friendly bye schedule. Plays 13 and 19. Look, no brainer. Like he's going to be the bye of the week next week. Like, you have to pretty much get him. Like at his price for what he scores. The only concern is he's been a bit injury plagued this year with that knee of his. But if you can, he's a 800k player priced below 700k, like a bona fide keeper in the mids. Get him in if you can.
Genuine value. He was in the 700s. People were talking about him as a must-have. So yeah, I love that. Anyway, that's our buy, hold, sell, wait, cash cow video for today.
This session, session just changes every week. We had one week where it was just Knights players.
Hey, a bunch of them went up 100k, 200k.
They were great buys. But by the way, speaking of Knights players, I thought we were going to use Jack Hetherington's profile pic as the thumbnail today. We'll bring it for next week.
Yeah. So yeah, look, I'm going to post a bunch of fantasy content here. Obviously, we've got tipping videos as well. Check out Bergs there. He is absolutely killing it on tipping. We already haven't seen it. If you're here in the 45th minute, then you're probably watching all the videos. So we'll catch you on the next one. Let us know in the comments all your trades and who you can captain this week, and we'll see you there.